Hi, it's really nice to meet you. My name is Emma Friday. I'm with the Louisville Political Review. If you just want to introduce yourself.
My name's Colin J. Hardin. I had to put the J in there because it just didn't sound right. My name Colin Hardin, but I am a server slash bartender, restaurant worker at the moment, and I am a candidate for Mayoral.
And why are you running for mayor?
Well, the past 2.5 years, ever since the pandemic, I mean, up until then, I didn't have a lot of care. I just disregarded politics. I foolishly believed that presidents, parties, they're not really going to dictate my life. I was wrong about that. So sometime in the 2 years of being on unemployment for a year, the wealth transfer of $1.8 trillion to, to people, to millionaires. And then, I mean, the just mishandled situation of both the narratives of like mask wearing and then just basic, vaccine hesitation, vaccine mandates. When people let each other start starting school boards, I mean, just it's insanity, absolutely insane. So,
Can I ask, how do you feel about the situation that Louisville is in now? You mentioned some mask mandate, the tenuous situation. Do you feel like Louisville is doing well recovering from the pandemic or not so well?
I think Louisville's doing pretty well. And honestly, Kentucky's done extraordinary well. Under the consideration, Tennessee, Ohio, did way worse COVID responses than us. I mean, that's really you got to give it for Sheer. I mean, he got a lot of pushback, and he might even cost him his governorship this election. But as he said multiple times, he's like, I'm not here for reelection. And I was like, that's a great concept. That's how people should be. If you become a career politician, that should just be how the cards play. You shouldn't aim for it. Because when you do that, then you stop looking at what's best and well, what's gonna has longevity.
Yeah, so can I ask one issue that I guess I, as a U of L student, am concerned about would be safety in the community. And we've seen that during the pandemic, and not necessarily related to the pandemic, but during the last couple of years, there have been questions about, how safe the downtown and the West End areas are and how well the police handles those situations. Do you want to speak a little bit about both police violence and the safety situation?
So the safety, the gun violence, the obesity, the suicides, even addiction, they all stem from the same problem. And I'd say it is miserable to live in this country if you're not filthy rich. And so one of the biggest problems that we have, especially in Louisville, is just desperation. There's no floor. In America, you just fall forever. There's not no floor to pick yourself back up on. If you lose your house, you don't have an address, you can't get mail. God forbid, then you lose your credit card. I mean, your social security card and your birth certificate and your ID. You can't get an ID, birth certificate. And then if you use drugs because if you use drugs because you have addiction issues or life issues or trauma or you're just trying to make it through another homeless night, they'll lock you up for it. So I mean, and then this next generation come up like my generation, millennials. We were the first ones to laugh less than the generation before us. Zoomers, that's looking even worse. So it's like you gotta see with a lot of these because a lot of these violence come from young people, and you gotta see that there's not any there's no hope. There's no future. I mean, things can't stay like we are now. It was 40% on an inflation rate.
So, can I ask you, what are some specific policies that you would advocate for?
So the number one thing is we need to take all police that have presence and that are diverted to drug enforcement and turn that all to violent crime, human trafficking. Uh, they need to focus on that, and we need to disregard completely drugs being illegal. I mean, cops do not need to enforce these laws. I mean, to be honest, it's a constitutional violation. And then, only by making drugs illegal, it does nothing but perpetuate all the violence, drug titles.
You would follow the lead of previous mayoral administrations with the decriminalization of drugs, even some hard drugs?
Every drug, every single drug.
Okay.
The right to life, liberty, pursuit of happiness. No one has any right to tell anybody how to pursue happiness. Not to mention that a lot of the damage that has been done to particularly the black community is done because of the war on drugs. And then Nixon's chief of staff is on record saying we knew that we did it only to prosecute hippies and black people who were most outspoken in the Vietnam War. It's like we have this knowledge. We've had it since the 90s, and we've done nothing with it. We continue to prosecute people, and you know, throw them in jail, and then the jail systems are all profit based, so they have no incentive to ever rehabilitate somebody. They just send them back in. Their only incentive is to send them back. I mean, it's sickening. So we have to divert all that effort, that useless effort, on the war on drugs, and we need to do a war on desperation, war on poverty, a war on addiction, like war on things that we have substantial control over. Not
Okay, so it seems like you would like to focus some more on economic issues. Can I ask, how would you deal with like the safety situation for the U of L campus specifically, like keeping students safe and reducing violent crime other than economic programs, which, while I might agree they're useful, can sometimes take a long time to have a positive effect?
so well, some of the economic programs, I mean, it's just like we didn't get here overnight. We're not gonna get out of it overnight. But the safety, the violence, that all that will dissipate if there's another option. There's I've looked into it a little bit. There's a program they've been running in California called Advanced Peace, and they're essentially paying people to not do violent crimes and stuff, right? But really, that's just the optics of it. The points of it is that people are shown another life. Like, because if you grow up in a violent neighborhood, your family and them are just in jail, in and out. I mean, we emulate the environment we're in. So we have to change the environment if we want to have any systemic change in like the neighborhoods.
So you're looking for some systemic changes, some overhauls. Other than Louisville's drug policy, are there any other areas that you would suggest big changes?
Environmentally, clearly, because we're just,
Could you speak to some specific policies?
So, for one of my policies, one of my ideas is to reorganize entirely the waste management into recycling centers. Like, it's silly that we have to pay for recycling, but trash free, and we're just polluting. And then on top of that, we just lay waste upon waste that, blankets, microwaves, carbon gases. It's not good. We will reorganize that. And then as far as the energy is concerned, like, I don't understand why LG&E and like other energy companies don't think that renewable energy is not something they can make money on too. Like, the landline is dead. Like, we haven't used landlines ever yet. Everybody's packaged one with the bill. They're still making money off it. Like, renewable energy doesn't have to be this like end all be all to like capitalism. Like,
So you're looking to at least support, possibly subsidize renewable energy from the Louisville Metro perspective.
Absolutely, and I'm looking to realign some of these businesses' perspectives into like, renewable energy can be, it's just as profitable as, natural gas and oil, and it, won't kill us all in the meantime.
So I'm going to ask next. It seems like you have a lot of really big ideas for Louisville,
Sure.
but we've been seeing recently a trend with the legislative sessions in Frankfurt where, obviously Louisville is a mostly Democratic city, the state of Kentucky, majority Republican, where the legislature in Frankfurt will pass bills that are often called a symbolic war against Louisville, such as House Bill 314, for example, which would allow new suburban cities in Jefferson County. There have been other bills that basically try to dictate how JCPS's school boards can meet, and just bills that affect JCPS and Louisville directly that are being passed in Frankfurt. And, as mayor, part of your job would be community relations with the outside world. And, you would have to deal quite a bit with the legislature that seems to be increasingly hostile to Louisville and the, if not the interest, at least the wants of Louisville's population. So I'm asking, how would you do that? How would you come to terms with the rest of Kentucky and try to forge a new path forward for Louisville's residents?
So the establishment Republicans and the Kentucky State Legislature are, for the most part, bad faith actors. Their policies and ideas won't stand a leg on that, like in any scrutiny. Like, they want to have like cops. I mean, lawyers carry guns in the courtroom. It's ridiculous. So with that and the gerrymandering, they just budget all the districts and whatnot. They're not playing by what we would say like fair rules. So it's going to take somebody that's not afraid to just say no, like, and take the consequences. Like, if, for example, if they were to like pass the abortion law that Texas was, I believe it'd be somebody's job in the executive to stop that. And while I'm new to government and policies and angles, I'm a great chess player, and I don't think, if I had to, you could just sit there and explain to people each and every day, like, what the Republicans' goals really are versus what their bills. you know, or what their talking points say. Because, you know, my Uncle Jeff states something, so he's told me some of the issues that they have in the legislative, and it's, you know, the divide is so stark, is that, like, the Republicans, they're not gonna work with the Democrats, period. It's just not. Like, so we're gonna have to, I mean, I figure, so how we gonna get that around this? Because I'm just thinking about it. So honestly, if we could make sweeping changes in Louisville quickly, and see that the Republicans, because that's really what it is, the Democrats only lose because they don't do anything. If we could show sweeping change, we could sway some of these voters. I don't believe that Kentucky is gonna be, you know, a safe state of red forever, because it just, I mean, Republicans haven't done anything, Democrats haven't done anything.
So talking about some sweeping changes, you've talked about economic policy. In the short term, how do you plan on dealing with situations like homelessness, which in local, unfortunately, has been growing in past years? And, you know, as a student of U of L who lives very close to downtown, we visibly see homelessness. But a lot of the residents in Louisville, especially, you know, far out in the East End, might never see a homeless person. So how do you plan on dealing with that problem and housing people?
So, just the other day, I was driving through the West End, and it looked like something out of The Walking Dead. Like, it was just dilapidated, dead, like entire neighborhoods empty. And we have far more empty homes and run down homes. I mean, you can't drive through the South End without seeing every other house being boarded up. Churches boarded. There's 3 houses churches, boarded up as soon as you get off Broadway on the exit. Drive out every day. All these properties can be renovated and restored. And at the same time, we can create jobs for these people that are homeless, give them, you know, a place, something to do, a place to stay. I mean, and, you know, even if they, you know, they're on some wild, even if they're on some, like, wild idea, like, I'm going to be free, no one can tell me what to do. All right, fine, you still have an address at you know, a manure center or a shelter. All these shelters would be doubled with apprenticeships in, like, trades like carpentry and electrician. You know, and the workforce of both anybody that was convicted of nonviolent drug offenses and anybody, you know, homelessness, vagrancy, any of that, would all come with these diversion programs aimed at not only restoring properties all around the city, but also in granting apprenticeships and trades to these people so they can go on and move in, you know,
All right, so it seems like it would be a training program coupled with more shelters and renovating properties. So basically diverting funds to the homelessness crisis.
Yeah, with you know, the expressed interest in mind of rejuvenation of, you know, particularly the worst neighborhoods, you know, as far as, you know, the economic terms.
Mm-hmm. And how do you feel about developments like Nulu, which has gained a lot of criticism in the last few years for gentrification? Do you feel like another development like that would be the way forward, or do you have a different idea?
I think we get too caught up in developing things as, like, we can get this whole new thing. It's like, we don't need to develop anything. We need to restore things. That's so. As far as news is concerned, if they want to play ball and help out, you know, in these restoration projects, absolutely. But there's no reason to go spend, you know, $10 million on affordable housing that's just going to slowly go up in price range anyways, because they hold it on, you know, they hold it hostage while, you know, the housing market continues to go up. I mean, so it's like, while those ideas and those companies may have the best, you know, interest in mind, they only have short-term interest in mind. They don't think about the longevity of the situation. And that's why, you know, just to continue to keep building new stuff while, you know, the rest of our infrastructure crumbles and decays is just not an intelligent way to do things. I mean, if you're trying to make money, but, you know, the problem is that, like, no one should go to this job to make money. Like, this is a job for a public servant, not for, you know, somebody that wants money. If you want to make money, go play in the stock market. That's what it's for.
So if I could ask, you're a Democrat. The previous mayoral administration was a Democrat. I hear you laugh, but if you could give the biggest criticism you have of the previous administration and how you want to change policy going forward.
I couldn't tell you a single thing Fisher ever did. I could, like, off the top of my head. I mean, I challenge any just normal average person to tell me one thing he ever did. I mean, so, like, that's the biggest criticism. Like, this is supposed to be your city. You didn't treat it like that. You treated it like, the guest house. While, you and your people's, I guess, party or whatever at the actual house. The future administration is just, it verbatim what we've done wrong in this country continuously for the last 4 years.
So you feel like just enough wasn't done, and you're ready to come in and make big changes?
Yeah, absolutely. Swing for the fences, right?
Julia, do you have any other questions?
I don't know how to word this the best, but with the uproar and riots we saw, or protests, I guess I should say, we saw last summer.
Two things can be, they can be both a riot and a protest, like a protest.
Yeah.
And then I'll ask it because I think the audio will pick up differently.
Yeah, you would phrase it better.
Oh, but you just want to ask about the...
Well, just like, how do you alleviate those pains that the Black community of the city is feeling, like in response to everything that happened with Breonna Taylor? I know we kind of touched on police brutality, but how do you feel about the no-knock warrant, for example, and the body cameras? Like, what would be your policy?
So the
police?
body cameras are great.
Have her ask
I'm gonna way it's on camera and like the audio and everything. Sorry.
Okay.
I just wanted to make sure she didn't have anything else. But that's a good one.
Yeah, just rephrase it to
No.
I'm glad you asked that too.
So we touched on police violence and brutality a little bit earlier, but I want to delve deeper into that. In light of the Breonna Taylor shooting and the riots or protests that have been going on in the past couple of years, can you talk to some specific policies in the police department, not only funds, but also policies that you would implement, possibly relating to no-knock warrants or body cameras? I guess I'm asking, how do we alleviate the pains that the Black community in Louisville is facing?
So, the police, for example, the issues with the no-knock warrants is again the application of them. Like, if you want a no-knock warrant, like terrorist or hostage situation, a murderer, okay, but like drugs, again, for drugs, and this was all for somebody who they even had in custody, so it wasn't just feckless, it was incompetence. But it's the fault doesn't all the way lie on police because they are just a tool. It's the laws and the instruments, the judges that sign them, the chiefs that focus on the priorities of the week, the month, whatever. I will bring in somebody that shares my enthusiasm for drugs not being a crime. I mean, we should really follow Oregon's lead on that. The Oregon, first state to be like decriminalize all of it, and I mean, not saying legalize all of it, just decriminalize it all. Like, people shouldn't be going to jail for it. So, if you take out a serious risk of being, Black, because the thing is, the statistics that like Black people get charged far more severely than white people, and it's far more detrimental to their, just move forward and growth in this society. You eliminate that, you could go a long way with just, any Black people, well, I mean, really all Americans felt just the boot lift off their neck just a tiny bit. I mean, I think we'd see sweeping change.
Okay, so you're talking about decriminalizing drugs, which of course, the Breonna Taylor incident was over a small or non-existent amount of drugs.
Right.
But speaking to other issues, because the Black community in Louisville is plagued by lots of problems, many of which include the police, but not all of those are related to drugs. So if you could talk about like community relations, how do you want to improve community relations between the police and the Black community?
I do think that the biggest struggle the Black community's had overall, though, was drugs, police, and racism. And now we as a society have become a whole lot less racist, but our laws haven't become less like oppressive. So basically, they've just treated, it's why felonies, they don't allow felons because you can control the voting base. So we reorganize, you pull the police out of these neighborhoods, you stop having the police, if they do come in these neighborhoods, it's, for an actually productive thing. It's not to just, let's lock up the next person, see anybody act suspicious. Let's, on some moral, righteous high ground, because I don't believe this substance is good for you or whatever. Like, these ideas, they need to be pushed away. As far as the body cams go, I love the idea of body cams, and I don't know why the police or anybody gets to, like, look over them before they pass them out. Like, I mean, I'm not saying you should just immediately post it to, like, WLKY, but I mean, for them to have 6 months, 9 months, sometimes a year before they get to hand over what is supposed to be public record, no, like that would be immediate.
Okay, so you're talking about more body cams or making body cams mandatory and releasing the footage promptly and reduced police presence in black neighborhoods. Because as we know, police presence in white neighborhoods is low.
Yeah.
So I guess this begs a bigger question, which is, do you see yourself reducing funds for the police's budget? Do you see yourself diverting funds or simply using police officers in a different way?
Using the police officers in a way, because I don't want to. Police don't really get paid anything either because we've had wages stagnant. So I mean, I want police to be paid what they work. And another thing that happens is that like police officers, at least a lot of these shootings, I believe personally, come from fear and in the situations. And that's not just lack of training and maybe lack of like psych evaluations and things like that. It's also from a lack of like preparedness. So like from why every police officer, especially nowadays when like anybody could know MMA and gym, so like they should all be training, three times a week, in jiu-jitsu, judo, and in ways to engage other opponents that don't end in lethality. And it should also be paid for by the government. So I mean, honestly, if anything, it may be added a little more funds to it to make sure that all the police are properly trained and comfortable and out there, for the cameras.
So you mentioned martial arts, and I think the last question that I have for you is, when we were looking over your website in preparation for this interview, we noticed that you said on your website that you follow a Bushido code, and you did bring up martial arts. So I was just wondering if you could speak to your personal philosophy on that, just because I'm curious.
So Bushido is a very simple breakdown, and as a person that's not religious, we all find our ways to like make sense of it all. And all it really says is that like any choice you make is between the honor and dishonor. That's it. It doesn't matter how extreme that choice is, even if it was life or death. It's like, but it's honorable. What was honorable? That's just. It also doesn't have the loophole that a lot of religions do where you can repent, just feel bad. I feel bad to give it up. No, you have to. It's a strict code to adhere to put something above, money or materialistic things. It's something I think is very, very necessary to have any type of sound life. The problem really is that we're all obsessed in this cult of the self, right? Like it's kind of what we do. It's like it's why people. Instagram's huge. Why Facebook's huge. What we need to do is show people that a life of service is the only way to have a life worth meaning, and that's it's ironic that I worked at a restaurant, but the word samurai does mean to serve, and
Interesting.
to serve something higher than yourselves. And for a long time it's just a team, like wherever the team was at, whether it was my friends, whether it was the restaurant I work at. And now I'm looking around like, no, the team's all of us and everybody's suffering. So I guess we'll shoot back to why I'm running for mayor now is because, I've always been for the team. Like the team's always been my first priority. I just didn't realize, America should never mind to see the team was, us as a country had been suffering.
Well, I think that pretty much wraps up all of my questions. Thank you so much for coming in for an interview today.
Thank you too.